So, what on earth does the end of World War II have to do with the chemical composition of our atmosphere? I know it sounds like a wild, totally unexpected link, but that's exactly what we're going to dive into. We're going to explore how these massive political projects of the 20th century might have, completely by accident, kicked off a brand new chapter in the history of planet Earth itself. We're going to follow the clues from the rubble of war all the way to the rock layers of our planet to solve a pretty big geological mystery.
You see, Earth scientists have pinpointed this incredible phenomenon they call the Great Acceleration. And here's what it means. Starting right around 1950, you can look at dozens of graphs measuring human activity. We're talking everything from population growth and energy use to how much fertilizer we use and even tourism. And they all just suddenly shoot straight up, like a hockey stick. And at the exact same time, you look at graphs measuring the Earth's systems, things like CO2 levels, ocean acidification, and they do the exact same thing. It's a genuine planetary mystery.
So the really crucial point is this. Something happened right in the middle of the 20th century that fundamentally changed our relationship with the planet. It sent the entire Earth system careening down a new and constantly accelerating path. So the big question we're trying to answer here is, what was that trigger? What flipped the switch?
To find our answer, we have to rewind the clock. We need to go back to the world as it was right after the Second World War. So let's set the scene for what the planet looked like in 1945. You know, the word devastated just barely scratches the surface. We're talking about entire continents scarred by unbelievable destruction. Economies hadn't just slowed down, they had completely collapsed. Basic infrastructure, railways, power grids, roads, it was just gone. Food shortages were everywhere. This wasn't just some political or economic crisis. It was a crisis of civilization, and it created this massive power vacuum on the world stage.
And this is where our story really gets interesting. The effort to rebuild was going to be so gigantic, so planet-spanning, that its impact wasn't just going to be written down in history books. No, scientists who study the actual rock layers of the Earth, geologists from organizations like the International Union of Geological Sciences, they would eventually see its signature written into the planet itself. Just think about that. A human event leaving a permanent geological trace.
Okay, so let's get to our first big clue in solving this mystery of the Great Acceleration. Into that power vacuum left by the old, shattered empires stepped two brand new, incredibly powerful nations, and they had completely opposite visions for the future of humanity.
Yeah, right out of that wreckage, the United States and the Soviet Union emerged as the world's only true superpowers. The U.S. mainland hadn't been touched by war, and its economy was just booming from all that industrial production. And the Soviet Union, despite suffering just unimaginable losses, had a colossal army and now controlled this huge new sphere of influence all across Eastern Europe. But here's what made this rivalry so different: the total, absolute incompatibility of their worldviews. This wasn't your typical squabble between great powers over territory. This was a global clash of ideologies. On one side, you had American-led capitalism and free markets, and on the other, Soviet-led communism and total state control. Each side genuinely saw the other as an existential threat to its way of life. And both of these superpowers had the tools to push their vision across the entire planet. They had these huge technologically advanced militaries, which were very soon going to be backed by planet-altering nuclear weapons. They built powerful economic blocs and formal military alliances like NATO versus the Warsaw Pact to lock in their influence. The world was literally split in two.
And this rivalry, well, it didn't take hold for very long. The competition just escalated with terrifying speed. The Soviet atomic bomb in '49, that shattered the U.S. monopoly. Then the Korean War in 1950 turned this ideological struggle into a brutal hot war. The whole world entered this state of permanent, high-stakes competition. And that is clue number one, a global ideological battle for total supremacy.
All right, now for our second clue. This one is found in America's grand strategy to win this new global conflict. And it wasn't just about military power. It was about actively reshaping the entire world economy.
The thinking in Washington was pretty straightforward. A broken, starving Europe was just fertile ground for communism to take root and spread. But an economically strong and stable Europe, well, that would be a powerful ally. So, the United States came up with this incredibly audacious solution, the Marshall Plan. And let's be crystal clear, this was so much more than a simple aid package.
The goal, as one historian put it, was nothing less to refashion Europe in fundamental and audacious ways. The point wasn't just to patch up the damage, it was to completely tear down and rebuild the European economy on a whole new foundation, a foundation that looked an awful lot like America's.
So, what was this American blueprint? Well, first, they had to fix the immediate money problem, the dollar shortage, so Europe could actually buy the stuff it needed to rebuild. Second, and this is so important, they had to push European countries to come together into a single, unified market. Third, this would create a prosperous buffer zone to contain Soviet influence. And finally, the ultimate goal, remake Europe based on the American model of mass production and mass consumption.
And to make this all happen, the U.S. put its money where its mouth was. $17 billion. Now, in today's money, you're talking well over $150 billion. This was not charity. It was a strategic investment on a scale the world had never seen before.
Now here's the really brilliant part of the plan. The money came with some serious strings attached. To get even a single dollar, European nations had to work together. They had to create a permanent organization to coordinate everything. They were basically forced to start tearing down trade barriers that existed for centuries. And maybe most importantly, they had to accept the economic revival of their former enemy, West Germany, as the industrial engine of this new Europe. America was using its cash as leverage to force a whole new kind of economic integration.
Okay, so we've got our two big clues: an intense, globe-spanning ideological war and a massive economic project designed to supercharge production and consumption. So let's connect the dots and see how this all links back to our geological mystery.
First, the Cold War provided the motivation. It created this relentless, decades-long pressure cooker for new technology, for industrial production, for resource extraction. Winning meant you had to outproduce and out-innovate the enemy, not just at home, but on a global scale.
And second, the Marshall Plan provided the mechanism. It built and bankrolled a brand new economic engine on the other side of the Atlantic. It rebuilt Germany's industrial heartland, and it locked in a system that was totally dedicated to ever-increasing levels of production and consumption, all of it powered by cheap energy.
And there it is, the intense, competitive pressure of the Cold War, combined with the explosive new economic engine of the Marshall Plan. That was the trigger. Together, they are what ignited the Great Acceleration, that dramatic, sudden spike in both human activity and planetary change that kicks off right around 1950.
The impact of this has been so profound, so massive, that many scientists now argue we've actually left the Holocene epoch. You know, that 12,000-year period of stable climate we've had since the last ice age, and we've entered a new one defined by us. They call it the Anthropocene, the age of humans.
And look, this isn't just a cool idea, it's a physical reality. The Great Acceleration has pushed our planet's fundamental systems, its climate, its chemistry, its biodiversity, so far off course that they are now operating in a state that is completely new. We've literally knocked the Earth onto a new trajectory.
So it all leaves us with this incredible, kind of scary thought. If a political project to win the peace after a war accidentally started a new geological age, what kind of collective project will it take to define its next, and hopefully more sustainable chapter?